saying, listen, Donald does well with voters who have relatively low information, who are not that engaged and who are angry and they see him as an angry voice. Mm-hmm. Where we are beating him is when voters get more engaged and they get more informed. When they inform themselves, they realize his record. He's what they're angry at.
Ted Cruz with CBN's David Brody discussing the difference between Donald Trump's supporters and his own. Now, Trump has gotten a lot of support from a whole lot of folks, and he's obviously garnered much more media attention than any other candidate. And Ted Cruz insists that should Donald Trump become the GOP nominee, the press will take a different tack toward Trump's candidacy. Ted says Donald's being treated with kid gloves right now, but they will come off should Trump become the GOP nominee. Well, let's talk about that now with a couple of stellar journalists. Skyping in from Newsmax, Washington, staff writer for The Hill, Jesse Byrnes, and Center Screen, likewise from Newsmax, Washington, the White House correspondent for National Journal, S.V. Date. Gents, we appreciate your time here tonight on Newsmax Prime. Jesse, let me go to you first. Do you agree with what Ted Cruz has to say about what will happen with Donald Trump should he become the Republican nominee? Can Trump expect a very thorough vetting, indeed some might call it attacks, from the mainstream press?
Well, certainly, as soon as this is down to a race between the Republican and Democratic nominees, there'll be a lot more time for media in general to kind of report on and write about the two candidates. We've had more than a dozen Republicans for the better part of this past year writing about them, and so you're even seeing right now, just down to 4 candidates, a lot more focus on Trump's business records, some of his previous ventures, Trump University. Some of that has been the result of rivals like Marco Rubio going after Trump and accusing him of certain things, and then having to kind of report on that and break down the details of that. But certainly, if it's down to just the two remaining nominees, if Trump is the nominee, you could expect even more kind of vetting of his record and getting down to the details of his previous business experience.
Shirish, it's very interesting. A guy who I worked with quite a bit up on Capitol Hill during my days in Congress, former Republican leader Tom DeLay, appeared on the Steve Malzberg show last night here on Newsmax TV, and Tom told Steve that Republicans absolutely have to stop Trump.
We have got to stop Trump, whatever it takes, without cheating or violating the rules of the Republican primaries. We've got to stop Trump, and it's going to take everybody on board to do that.
Well, and that's one thing, SV, when you're talking about head-to-head competition in the caucuses and the primaries. But what is the talk around Washington, especially should the Republicans listen to some of the establishment folks who say, gee, we got to take a second look at the rules. We need to have a brokered convention in Cleveland. Are you hearing anything about that?
Oh, yeah, there's quite a bit about that. The Republican establishment, and this is beyond more than just the rich donors and the people who live inside the Beltway. There are a lot of folks who are concerned that a Donald Trump nomination means that not only will you lose the White House, but you'll lose pretty much every down-ballot race that the Democrats can tie their candidate to, or tie Donald Trump to that particular candidate. So, yeah, there's a lot of concern, and there is some serious talk about going after him at the convention.
Jesse, let me turn to you, see what you're hearing up on the Hill. Now, a lot of times in primaries, members of Congress want to lay low. They don't want to get involved because they might be alienating part of their constituency if they already have the Republican nomination locked up. How much indigestion or unease is the current battle for the presidential nomination calling amongst those GOP senators up for re-election? And, of course, every member of the House is up for re-election.
Well, yeah, certainly this is somewhat of a watershed moment for a lot of Republicans having to decide, are they going to finally embrace Cruz or who at this point is best positioned to take the nomination instead of Trump, or if it is Trump, are they going to rally around him? That's kind of been the open question for months now, and we still don't have a definite answer. on that. It seems like enough senators and members of the House are still kind of hedging a bit to say, we're going to support the nominee in November, but, and their preference would of course be not Trump. Only a handful of senators and representatives has come out.
Yep, you take a look at that, Jesse. I guess we've got Jeff Sessions of Alabama, and I think of Duncan D. Hunter over in the House, unequivocal in their support for Donald Trump. SV, before we part company, about a minute left, and used to keep tabs on things down in Florida and Tallahassee. It's kind of interesting. Florida Governor Rick Scott was on MSNBC's Morning Joe earlier today, and he was essentially cut off after he didn't exactly answer to a question about Donald Trump's comments that, quote, Islam hates America. Let's watch and listen.
Well, I can tell you what's going on in Florida. We're at almost 45-year low on our crime rate.
No, I don't.
So in our state, we're heading the right direction.
I want to know. I want to know what's going on in your head, Governor. We're friends. I want you to answer the question. Do you personally think that Islam is a religion that hates America?
So, Joe, what I can tell you in our state is we have a lot of Muslims that live in our state.
Wrap it.
So you heard Joe's sidekick saying, wrap it. Don't politicians have the right to answer the question, even if it's a non-answer? SV, 15 seconds.
Well, this is Rick Scott we're talking about, and he has not answered questions now for 5.5 years. I mean, I don't know what the big deal is. My colleagues in Florida never get an answer from the governor. So, welcome to the NFL, I guess.
That'll be our final answer. SV and Jesse, we thank you for your time. There's more coming up.